Have you ever felt like you're missing out on meaningful connections or life experiences? Being open and receptive can be the key to unlocking stronger relationships and improving your mental well being. Join me today as we talk about how simple shifts can help you navigate life's challenges with more ease and fulfillment. Welcome back, my friends, to Fulfillment Therapy, where we explore strategies to enhance mental health, wellness, and life fulfillment. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're focusing on the transformative power of being open and receptive. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. This mindset can truly help us break free from feeling overwhelmed and stuck, allowing us to find more enthusiasm and passion for life. When I was thinking about this podcast episode, I was thinking back on one client that I had that really struggled with anxiety, and he believed that other people needed to help him feel safe. He thought that his family should create this bubble around him to protect him from the world. However, when we talked more about this through a few different sessions, in one pivotal session, he was able to confront some of his fears, and he began to open his mind to the idea that most people are safe, even though that was very hard for him to cognitively believe. Well, this small shift led to some amazing changes. He started challenging his cognitive distortions or those irrational beliefs and stopped avoiding social interactions. And as a result, he had transformational conversations and formed these deeper connections that were just waiting for him to step forward with that openness and that receptivity. I remember when he talked about this the following session after that pivotal one, he just said, there are so many things that I've given up because of my fears, and I didn't even realize what I was sacrificing. He talked about how amazing it felt once he started to be more receptive, once he started to open his heart to the idea that maybe these things were in his lane, his side of the street, and not necessarily a reflection of the real world. Now, that didn't mean that all of a sudden he stopped having fears, but he started to see them in a different light that served him and his family better. And I will come back to that story in just a minute. I want to talk more about openness and receptivity. So being open and receptive means embracing those new ideas, those new perspectives and experiences with an open. This allows us to feel heard and understood, and is so closely tied to our mental health. Brené Brown said, vulnerability is the birthplace of connection and the path to the feeling of worthiness. Now, what does worthiness have to do with openness and receptivity? For parents, this might mean listening to our kids without judgment and creating a safe space for them to express themselves freely. As a spouse, this might mean looking again at some of their common complaints that they have about your relationship or about you, and finally taking ownership for your part so that you can both grow more fully. I know my husband and I have to do this all the time, and it can be really difficult to come face to face with those things. For example, if they're saying, you're too sensitive, you're so defensive, you're distracted during family time, any of those things, that might be an opportunity to take some ownership and be more open and receptive to what is being said instead of just shutting down. I'm not saying their approach couldn't use some help because that's probably their side of the street thing, but recognizing what those patterns are and being open and receptive to what your part in that is. So, how does openness and receptivity impact our relationships? When we are receptive, we build trust and intimacy. It improves our communication and our conflict resolution skills. For example, a spouse who is open about their mental health struggles can create a supportive environment where both people feel understood and valued. And then this openness can lead to a more empathetic and compassionate relationship. That actually reminds me of my son the other day. He's more private about a lot of things, and he was being very reactive towards a lot of us and just not being kind. And after the second day of little reminders to be kind, I finally took him on a drive and I just said, "Hey, I'm not going to force you to tell me anything that you don't want to." And it also impacts the environment of the home. When you're not willing to be open and vulnerable and share some of those things, it's hard for us to be empathetic and patient. For example, if I just kept yelling at you and harping on you and I didn't share why I was struggling, that would be really hard for you to understand. But if I shared something like, "It's my brother's death day and I'm feeling raw and emotional today and I'm sorry for reacting the way I have." Once you know the reason, it's easier for you to be patient and empathetic towards me. But son, when you don't share anything, it's hard for any of us to do that. So we're not able to feel close to you or patient or as kind. So just keep that in mind when you think about what to share and what not to share and how it impacts everyone else too. Now, did he suddenly want to share everything? No, but I'm hoping that I'm planting those little seeds that eventually will bear fruit. Now, we talked a little bit ago about those cognitive distortions. How do we challenge those, and how does that tie to openness and receptivity? Being receptive involves challenging those negative thought patterns or those cognitive distortions. When we do this, this helps reduce anxiety and depression by allowing us to see situations more realistically. Remember that in the case of my client, he kept seeing the world in a way that was tainted by his cognitive distortions that wasn't a true reflection of what the world was. Another example is that a parent might challenge the belief that they have to control everything to keep their family safe. And instead remember that things are beyond their control. When we're open to new solutions, that can really benefit our family instead of that tight control. We can also let go of wanting others to reinforce our irrational thoughts or our faulty thinking and simply stop and challenge them ourselves. And maybe this time validate what other people are saying instead of arguing with them again and again. I know that can be very difficult to do, but one thing you can do is on my website, I have a free page and it shows different worksheets. And one of them is cognitive distortions. And it'll break down some of those cognitive distortions for you and help you understand what they look like so you can recognize those irrational belief patterns that you might have. Now, let's talk about how this applies to parenting. So, open minded parenting encourages our kids to explore different viewpoints and learn from other people. This helps our kids develop that resilience and that adaptability, and is so important for navigating this earthly experience. We can model this open minded behavior by engaging in those respectful conversations with other people about all sorts of topics and show our kids that it's okay to have different opinions and that learning from other people is valuable. And you're going to have to show that more than once in so many different topics, and then maybe breaking it down afterwards, why it's so important to be open and receptive to other perspectives. Now, how else can we practice that receptivity in daily life? My friends, this can be as simple as being fully present in conversations or trying new experiences. For example, as a parent, we might decide to try a new hobby with our kids or create that sense of adventure in our homes with that openness to new experiences. Glenn Close said this: "What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more unashamed conversation." So when we're open to those new experiences, those conversations that maybe we're not always comfortable with, we can create a more supportive and understanding environment and model to our kids that this is okay. Maybe this is unknown and this is different from our own culture and our own perspective, but that's all right. We can be curious and interested in it instead of being so fearful and afraid and shut down. We can be open. We can be receptive. And again, model what that looks like. And if you don't feel like you're there yet, think of that mentor that does a really good job. Like I've mentioned this before, but my aunt does so well with this. She just has this loving curiosity, even when the perspectives are different, and you can't help but feel loved and safe in that environment. And that's what we want to create for our children and our loved ones and really anyone we encounter. So let's recap a few of those points from today. Number 1, embrace that vulnerability. Be open and vulnerable because that leads to deeper connections and the sense of worthiness. Transform your relationships with that openness, that greater trust, that deeper level of intimacy, and that better communication. Challenge those negative thoughts and be receptive to those cognitive distortions. And don't expect other people to reinforce these beliefs that might just be a paradigm that you are in that is not necessarily a reflection of true reality. Also, practice open-minded parenting and encourage that resilience and that adaptability in your kids by embracing different viewpoints and having conversations around things that maybe you weren't as comfortable talking about before, but maybe it's time. And for that last point, practice daily. It's okay to bring this up to your kids. Like, we be more open and receptive in our home. We want to practice more of that vulnerability, and we want to be more open to different ideas and adventures because we recognize how this will improve our mental health and wellness and our life fulfillment. Don't be afraid to just call it what it is. Maria Rilke put it really eloquently, and she said, openness, patience, receptivity, and solitude is everything. So what she's saying here is that when we have those things, we can embrace life and live it more fully and more meaningfully in those experiences. As we have greater openness and receptivity, we unlock these new possibilities for more fulfillment in our lives and in the lives of our family members. I just want you to visualize somebody that is very open, very receptive. Think about what traits that they have. Think about how they talk about different things, especially perspectives that they don't necessarily agree with. How do they handle that? How can you adopt more of those things? How can you become that person that responds in similar ways, like my aunt or my client? And moving forward, live with more openness and receptivity. You can do those 5 points that I talked about, or you can simply get still and reflect on the ways that you've seen that in others that you admire and seek to adopt those character traits yourself because it is possible, even if the progress seems very small. All right, my friends, that is all I have for today. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check out our blog on fulfillmenttherapy.org/blog. And I'll see you back here on Mondays and Thursdays with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.